Chapter 18. Perhaps this place needs more of such individuals. It's better to cut off those who enter with ill intentions early. If they had ill intentions, they wouldn't dare to step up against the Imperial Knights, risking their lives, especially against the Dr. Carducci. At those words, Nathan fell silent. A hint of amusement flickered in Kishir's red eyes. It was an interesting spectacle indeed. Almost a shame I couldn't share it with you. Knowing how much Kishir detested the nobles and the four major ducal houses, Nathan sighed at the sight of his master's rare, genuine smile. You seem to have enjoyed it immensely. Enjoyed it? Yes, I suppose so. It was fun and unusual indeed. His attention was drawn to him from the start. With such murmuring, Kishir stood up from his seat. By the way, Nathan, were there any messages while I was out? Yes, a message had arrived from the Sun Palace. Nathan retrieved a short letter from the leg of the courier bird that flew in just before their guest arrived and handed it to his master. The Sun Palace, a place where only the emperor of the Ore Empire could reside, had its insignia, the sun emblem, stamped clearly on the wax seal of the rolled up letter. Kishir took the letter, broke the seal, and finally read through it. As soon as the induction ceremony is over, they want me to bring the red stone. Isn't the induction ceremony the day after tomorrow? Yes, it's a tight schedule. Kishir threw the paper into the central furnace. The paper, thrown into the flames of the magic stone, burning in a rainbow of colors, was burnt to ashes in an instant without leaving any trace. Retrieving it isn't the problem. It's just the system here isn't fully established yet. I am a bit worried about what might happen if I leave for too long. You shouldn't push yourself too hard. The Paletta Knights are on standby, so if you tell me the number of people you need, I'll get them ready. Kishir turned his head towards Nathan. He frowned and smiled as if he had too many worries. You worry too much, Nathan. Lately, I have been thinking that even my late mother would have worried less about me. Since your awakening, everyone has been more concerned about you. They fear you might overexert yourself. I know my body best. Kishir cut off his adjutant's words quietly. So far, there hasn't been any problem. I apologize if I overstepped. No, it's all right. And about the nights, yes, prepare about 5. 5 is too few, then I should go with you too. You need to act on my behalf here. Who else will receive the message from the Sun Palace? Transporting an unknown object called the Red Stone with only 5 subordinates was too risky, even if Kishir himself was involved. I have to return quickly, so I can't move heavily. And it's not just 5 knights. I plan to select a few from here to participate in the mission. From here? Do you mean, despite knowing this group has been painstakingly established by his master, concern inevitably crept into Nathan's voice. Kishir responded with an expression as if he understood his worries. Didn't you just see? Given a bit more time, there are those who believe he could win against you. After observing for a while, I have noticed that there are many with quite interesting abilities. They are people who have gained power through the stone, so they might be of some help. In many ways, it is also the best opportunity to make the name cavalry known to the world. The decision had already been made by the master. Once Kishir made a decision, he was never the one to change his mind. Nathan looked at him for a moment before bowing his head. I understand. So do you plan on taking him with you? I'm considering it. Kishore smiled faintly as he spoke about you there. I want to see just how much power he possesses that he's so confident. His attitude of not caring whether he's a noble or an imperial family is quite intriguing. Don't you think it would be rather amusing to prod him a bit? I hope your interest does not escalate excessively. Worry was etched on Nathan's icy expression. Kishore rarely took a deep interest in anything, but when he did, he pursued it relentlessly until he had resolved it. Until now, this trait of his master hadn't caused any major problems. However, he thought there might be trouble for the first time if this interest were to deepen towards the commoner they had just met. Too little was known about those who had awakened their power 2 years ago. As soon as the extent of this man's power remained uncertain, it was crucial to prevent any potential dangers to his master. Are you worried that I might get hurt, Nathan? I'm aware that such a situation is unlikely, but there is always a possibility. Don't worry, Nathan. If there were things that could harm me so easily, there would be no reason for all this trouble. Kishore patted Nathan's shoulder lightly. Life is tedious, always needing to forcibly express what is stored within, no matter what. Compared to that, this is natural and interesting. Well, now you should go rest you. After Kishore said this, Nathan bowed his head in acknowledgement, retreated from the living quarters, and entered another room prepared for him. Even after his loyal adjutant disappeared, Kishore remained standing still in front of the central fireplace, not retiring to his bed. Unlike the red flames of the wood-burning fire, the fire fueled by a magic stone emitted a mystic multicolored glow, not giving off any smoke or ash, and burned for more than 10 days with just a handful of stones. Moreover, it didn't require ventilation, making it possible to create such a beautiful fireplace. When it was first invented, those familiar with wood burning fire and mages had treated it as magic. However, it had now become a common sight everywhere. That's why Kishore had specifically instructed to install this fireplace in the center of his dwelling. Would the outcome of his creation here be perceived as the fire? The answer remained unknown. 2 days later, a ceremony of conferring last names took place in the open space in front of the accommodations where the cavalry members stayed, with more than half of the entire cavalry members in attendance. It was a special event that had been held only a few times in the empire's history of over a millennium. The face of the cavalry members who were to receive the last name directly from the emperor were filled with awe. Reality may be humble, but still. As one of them, Yudhir stood in his black uniform. Ideally, the emperor himself should have attended an event such as a conferment ceremony to bestow the names of our last names in person. However, the number of people to be conferred were too large, and the emperor had already been absent for political discussions for several years, citing health reasons. Therefore, the ceremony took place not in the imperial palace, but in a small open space in front of the cavalry building, and Kishore Lahore, the commander of the cavalry, stood on the stage with a decree bearing the emperor's seal. But unlike his usual posture when making announcements to the cavalry members. Yet, even that was enough to inspire awe in the cavalry members. Receiving a title meant rising above being a commoner. They were liberated from many strenuous duties of commoners, received many benefits, and could pass on their last names to their families. In other words, they could establish a lineage, although they were not on par with the nobility who owned territories and titles. In other words, they could become nobility if they acquired those as well. When a commoner became a knight, one of the few professions they could aspire to rise in status and receive the title of Sir, they couldn't pass on the title to their family, so this was an incomparably greater benefit. Receiving a last name meant exactly that. Moreover, it's a last name given by His Majesty, the Emperor himself. It's unbelievable. As names were called one by one and individuals stepped forward, Kana, who was next to Yudhir, patted her cheeks with an awe-struck face. I'm not sure if we really deserve all this. We haven't done anything yet. Of course they didn't. Of course they deserved it. They would become accustomed to receiving more rewards every time they completed a significant mission later on. In Yudhir's case, who had been a commander, he had received territories and titles directly from the emperor. He even received several mansions in the capital. He had received so many precious treasures, servants, and all sorts of honorable titles that eventually none of them seemed to have any meaning. Looking back, it seemed like a laughable memory. Yudhir, aren't you happy? Smile a bit more. I'm happy too. Kana lowered her voice and whispered, perhaps because Yudhir's expression seemed dull as he recalled the past. He replied, but she seemed unconvinced. Does that look like a happy person's face? I don't think so. Next, Kana. Yes. Fortunately, at that time, Kana's name was called. Yudhir watched Kana go up to the stage. I confer the honorable last name, Wand, to the cavalry member Kana. Thank you. I accept the last name. Kana Wand. Kana, who had received a new title, turned around with tears welled up in her eyes and bowed. That was the only scene that didn't exist in the past. Next, Yudhir.